What up, world? It's Pimo, aka Jadea, checking in on y'all one good time. So I wanted to bring to you guys attention some very interesting information that I've found. And I'm going to leave the link in the description, of course, of where I got my source from. And it was from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. They posted a yearly study where they reveal marriage rates by race, okay? And this came to my mind because you hear oftentimes, I've heard like in life, in real life, and I hear online that, you know, black men don't want to get married, and women should no longer date black men because black men don't want to get married. So I was trying to find some type of way to statistically gauge that, okay? And hopefully find out other information that can kind of point me in the right direction and can kind of contrast and compare from the various racial groups how many of them are getting married, what percentage are they getting married at. Okay, so let's understand like basic mathematics, right? Like, first and foremost, as African Americans, we are a minority, right? Out the way. So clearly there will be more white people getting married because there's more white people, right? And in your community, there may be more Mexicans, right? And so you're going to see more Mexican people married. Or if you live in an area that's predominantly black or Asian, whoever it is, the majority, those are going to be the ones who you see married the most, okay? But let's get right into these numbers, all right? Straight away, as they say in England. All right. So according to the study, it revealed and it showed that black men, and this was a study that was taken from men ages 15 and up. Now, why they chose 15, I don't know. Maybe in certain cultures, Hispanic, they marry them off a little younger. No disrespect, you know what I mean? I know what it is, though. Yeah. So they might marry a little bit younger. So 15 and up, okay? And what they found in this study is that 49% of black men ages 15 and up reported never being married, okay? I think the study was about 18 to 20,000 black men that they surveyed, maybe less, that they surveyed on this. And I guess they figured that was a good enough control group to get some accurate statistics, and so that's what they did. 49% of them reported never being married, okay? And with regards to black women, it reported that 48% of them reported never being married, okay? 49% black men never been married, 48% black women never been married, 15 and up, okay? Before I get into that, let's talk other cultures, right? Other nationalities. So, with Hispanics, 43% of Hispanic men ages 15 and up reported never being married. Again, 43%, and 36% of Hispanic women reported never being married, okay? 43 and 33% respectively. And for white individuals in America, 32% of white men reported never being married, okay? 32% white men reported never being married, and 26% of white women reported never being married. So there's all types of information and all types of conclusions that you can draw from such a research or such, information, right? There's a couple of things that stand out to me. Obviously, we as African Americans, both male and female, we had the highest rates of people who, we were ranked the highest for those who had never been married. Okay, and the interesting thing is that black men and black women pretty much had the same percentage, right? So the same percentage of black women that were never married or the same percentage of black men who were never married. So that tells a lot. It could be so many different things when it comes to us, right? Is it that black men are just are in relationships where they're not married? Okay, probably, I don't know. Could it be that we, over the last 20 years, and this is where I tend to think, is that we as African Americans over the last 20 years have taken our minds off of marriage, off of long-term commitments. I think that a lot of our men are completely away from that. Maybe not so much anymore, but I'm talking about over the course of the last 20 years, right? Like, in other words, men in their younger years spent a lot of time just messing around, not thinking about, marriage, right? And maybe not to the same degree, maybe not black women to the same degree, but I think the error in a lot of the thinking of certain women across all nationalities is that having sex with a man is going to lead to a marriage, right? And a lot of women find that that's not true. Marriage is not established through sex, But if you want to go back, look, I put it like this. There is no higher standard of living than you will find in the Old Testament Bible. And I know I'm all over the place, but I'm just using this for an example. There's no other higher standard of living than what you see in the Bible, right? The Old Testament Bible. And even according to the law of Moses, a man was only required by law to marry a girl who he had slept with if she were a virgin. Okay, in fact, even in the Old Testament, it tells you that if a man took a woman to be his wife, and on their honeymoon night, they, laid up together, and she could not produce tokens of virginity, then that man would fine her father and give her back to the dad, and they would be separated. So even on the highest law, the standard is very clear that this rule of law applies for virgins, okay? And non-virgins will be exempt from that, which is why in most spiritual religious organizations, they teach that sex before marriage is a sin. And in the Bible, I believe that it is as well, too. So it's there as a form of protection for people. But some people feel as though, particularly women feel as though, that sex is the way that you move closer to marriage. And that is not the case, okay? And perhaps it's done more harm than good, because the byproduct of sex before marriage is children out of wedlock. And we know that, I saw a study a couple years back that said that like 73% of children born to black women were born out of wedlock. Okay, so this very well likely is also contributing to this 48% of black women never being married, because the truth of the matter is that when you have children involved and you're a single person, you're trying to date, you may find that things are a little bit more complicated than if you were just a single person without kids, because you have certain responsibilities and certain things going on. So it's a little bit more challenging, I think, for men and women who find themselves in that category to find not just people to be with, okay, quote unquote date, who they really sleeping with, but to actually get married, okay? And so I believe that is a part of the reason why those statistics are this way. And then, like I said, our whole culture, if you look back over the last 20 years at what the crack era and the post-crack era, which was the days of hip-hop, and now we have all this trap stuff, if you look at all of that culture, it has produced very little positivity and very few marriages, okay, for black people. What it's producing is children out of wedlock. It's producing drug addicts. It's producing very materialistic people. And I don't want to stay focusing on just black folks, because I know it may be other black or other folks watching this, but, this is what this channel, this is what we talk a lot about. But think about this, is that we as African-American people, we are some of the most materialistic people, okay? And we oftentimes are chasing after a life that is completely fake, okay? Like, wise people live under their means, or excuse me, they live underneath what they can afford, right? So that way they can put something away. You understand what I'm saying? People who are wise don't always floss and feel the need to show off. But I noticed that a lot of times it's the poorest people who, as soon as they get a little bit of something, they want to show it off, right? And then we create this huge rift from the haves and the have-nots. And like, nobody wants to be that kid who's poor, right? Obviously, no one wants to be that kid, and people don't want to be that person's friend, and they just have a harder life. When the reality of the situation is that when you look across all racial groups, we as black people have the lowest wealth compared to like white folks. Like, think about this for a second. Think about this. I'm sure even me, I went to school with some white kids, some kids whose families were very well off. And it didn't show all the time in the things that the kids had. It showed in the things that their parents had, okay? Their parents, if you ever went to their parents' house, their parents had a fat crib somewhere. The kids go to school dressed normal. But what do black people want to do? Black people want Jordans. Black people want this Nike stuff, and all this name brand stuff, and want to look the part. But when they go home, they live in an apartment complex. You know what I'm saying? Single mama, and their mama's working 2 jobs to support their Jordan habit. Like, it doesn't make any sense, guys. And I think that this culture that we have just accepted is actually contributing to the fact that a lot of our people are not getting married, okay? So let's continue on. 43% of Hispanic men never being married. I found that was interesting because the argument that I always hear is that, well, black men don't want to get married. But do you ever hear that being said about Hispanic men? Never. I've never heard a situation where a woman is saying that, well, Hispanic men don't want to get married. Like, not true, okay? Even though there's only a 6% difference between Hispanic men and black men with regards to marriage rates, okay? Those who have been married, okay? And with regards to white men, 32% of white men had never been married. And there's probably a myriad of reasons why that is. I would imagine the reason why it's so high or higher than other racial demographics. First of all, we live in the United States, okay? Like it's the United States of America. Like, this is the place where, you know, white people enslaved everyone and pretty much, you know what I'm saying, used violence to conquer so many different nationalities in this land. So, and that government, that system there's still certain elements of that system in place. So these people have power. When you have power, you have wealth. When you have wealth, you get women. Like, that's how it works, right? So, and then on a deeper level also too, I think that a lot of, like white families and white men in general, like they're not out here doing some of the things that you see a lot of other nationalities do, okay? So it's kind of interesting because despite the savagery, a lot of the families have done a pretty good job of trying to raise decent, young white men who have a decent level of moral character, right? And if you're able to establish your foot in the wealth door at an earlier age, then things in life just fall in place for you, okay? And so, yeah, I think things are a little bit easier for white men, which would explain that 32% number, okay? And 36% of Hispanic women, it said, were never married. And I found that to be interesting because there's a difference between, and it's this way for all groups. There's a difference between men and women respective to each race. For example, for Hispanic men, 43% were never married. For the Hispanic women, 36% had never been married. So what that means is that more women were getting married than there were men, right? The same thing is true for whites. It says here that 32% of the men of men were never married, and 26% of women were never married, right? So translate that however you want. White women are getting married at much higher rates than any other group of people, almost twice the rate of black women, according to this study. But it also shows that there was a very little difference, a very small gap between the percentage of black men and black women who had never been married. I mean, that's a telling story in itself as well, too. I think at the end of the day, for us as African Americans, I think it's very easy to just blame one another. I think it's very easy for black women to just say, well, black men, and look at every shortcoming and every small thing and every negative statistic and say that, well, see this, black men this, and they're focusing, people see what they want to see, right? And for a lot of people, they form their opinions based on their past experiences, right? But your past experiences are not the experiences of everyone, right? That's just your personal experience, right? And on another note, people have to be careful about pretty much cursing themselves, because what you speak becomes reality, right? So if you speak all this negativity, how do you expect to actually find a good black man when you're speaking so negatively about it? You know what I mean? Like, that's no bueno, right? And for us as black folks, I think that we really have to evaluate our culture and, like I said in previous videos, find ways to positively impact that culture. You know, remind young men that, listen, guys, you know, you better not even think about dating, because, you know, I'm gonna tell you right now, like, in my household, like, and I don't have, you know, sons like that or whatever, but, you know, all this dating, that's not how we gonna be getting down. Like, and it's crazy how we do it in America. People will say they're dating when really they're just sleeping together. You know what I'm saying? They're casually sleeping together, right? And that leads nowhere. Like, that's crazy. Successful races of people, let's think, for example, Indians, right? Indians don't just sleep around, okay? They get married, you know what I'm saying? They don't have babies out of wedlock too often, because that's not what they do as a people. They just have that custom. And so I think it's necessary for us as black folks to first internally adopt the notion that this is going to be my new norm. I'm going to raise my standard, right, on an individual level. And then we can spread that individuality, that shared individuality, across our demographic, okay? And the thing to be careful about, I'm going to say this and I'm going to get out you guys' hair. The thing to be careful about is that what I see today is the motivation behind a lot of, or some black women, for elevating their standards. A lot of times the motivation is rooted in a disliking or a hatred for black men, right? Black men are this, so we're going to elevate ourselves. So in other words, they need hatred for black men or a disdain for black men to do that, right? Which is crazy, okay? So I think that we should be able to raise our standards without attacking each other. And when we can do that, and when we can maturely focus on solutions, I think that we as a people will be so much better. And we can impact these numbers and change things and have happier families and a happier future, all right? Together as a people, all right? Anywho, this P-Mo, a.k.a. Jadea, checking in. I'm checking in on y'all. Go.